Good morning. So if you are trying to learn anything, whether you're in a high school or college course, online courses, or just self-studying, pursuing something, this video is for you. I'm going to give you some general basic principles of learning that I find helpful. I'll give you some basic steps that I've laid out. It's designed mostly for something that's very difficult to learn, or if you generally struggle with learning. If you're taking a course that's a little bit easier, you might skip some of the steps. That's fine. But I'm laying it out how I would handle it with something that's very difficult. But before I get into that, two things I want you to remember. One, you can learn. It may take time, but you can learn. Just because things don't come naturally at first, don't get discouraged, because your brain is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more it's going to grow, the stronger it gets, okay? So just because it's difficult at first, that means you need to keep exercising and it will come. Give it time. And time is the second one. Learning takes time. Think of it as like coffee, making coffee and soaking those coffee grounds in water. The longer those coffee grounds are in that water, the stronger your coffee is going to get. Same with your learning. The longer you spend and the more time you spend with whatever you're learning, the stronger your learning is going to get, and there is no shortcut for that. Okay, so I've kind of broken this down into a 4-step process. This is something I actually used recently in an online course I was taking that I found particularly difficult. And like I said, if the material is easier for you, you could skip some of the steps. But the step one, probably most important, is know what you want to learn, okay? There's going to be two parts to this. What do you need to learn in order to pass the test and do the assignments? And what do you want to learn for your own purposes? If you are in a college or high school class that you really don't want to be in, I would encourage you to take a minute and think about it. And even if it's not your choice of a class, think about something that you can get, that you will want to learn and want to use. And keep in mind that all this learning you're doing is completely pointless if you're not going to use it. So you should have some idea of how you can use it and where you want to go with your learning. Have that from the very beginning. So before you do any of the readings, listen to any lectures, any of that, go into it with some idea of what it's going to be about and what you want to get out of it, both for passing the assignments and for your personal use. Step 2, and this works best with either reading assignments or if you have an online course where there's videos, you want to go through it once, normal speed. So watch the video, read the material, don't stop and take notes, avoid any distractions, focus on it, but just go through it. Try to understand it, but if there's things you don't quite get or that you miss, don't stress about it, you're just going through once. That's step 1, gives you a general idea of what the content is. Step 3, go through it again. And this is where we're making our stronger coffee, where you just ran the water through the coffee grains once really quick. Our coffee's too weak. Now we're going to run the water through the coffee grains slowly and let them soak like in a French press, and it's going to strengthen you. And so this second time through, this is the time that you want to spend a little more time trying to wrestle through and understand anything that was difficult or confusing, and this is when you want to take your notes. Okay, so this works really well for texts, if you're reading, or if you have videos, online lectures, those sorts of things. I'll talk in a minute about live lectures. It's a little more difficult with that. But basically, you want to take your notes. With your note-taking, keep in mind what you want to learn, what you want to get from this course. Do not take more notes than you need. If you're not sure you really need to write, if something seems somewhat irrelevant, don't write it down. It's a waste of your time. So take only the major notes that you need to get. Focus on what you want to get, whether it's what you need to know for assignments and tests or quizzes, and what you need to know because it's something you can see using and applying in your work or your life or whatever it is. So that's your focus in your note-taking. The thing to remember with note-taking is your brain cannot multitask. And that's why I recommend going through the material once without taking notes. Because every time you stop to take notes, you're stopping that flow of understanding. If it's a video, you can push pause, but still your brain stops this listening track and switches to this note-taking track. If the video continues to play, you're going to miss whatever is being said while you're writing the notes, and it kind of throws off your flow of comprehension. With reading, I would recommend read a section and then put the notes in your own words. Note-taking will be more effective for you if you do it in your own words and you're just not writing word for word. This helps you to kind of process things and make sure you know it stronger. Try not to just write word for word. Try to go through a section or a chunk and then summarize it in your own words. I realize there's going to be vocabulary or maybe formulas or things like that yes, you're going to want to write word for word. Live lectures, what I would recommend, again, you can't multitask. So if you're taking notes during a live lecture, you're going to miss everything the lecturer is saying while you're writing. And it slows, it's going to get in the way of your comprehension, actually. So I would recommend just listen to the lecture. If there's something that really jumps out at you that you really have to write it down quickly, but keep it short. And then at the end of the lecture, go ahead from memory, jot things down. Often lecturers will share their PowerPoint slides with you or whatever if you need to look back at certain words or vocab or terminology, and that's fine. If it's something that's really difficult where you're really going to need to go back to that lecture, you might record it. Still, listen at the end of the lecture, jot down your notes, but then you also have the recording if you need to go back to it. I think that's it on note-taking. Don't overdo your notes. Just get the important information that you're going to need for assignments, for tests, and for personal use. Step number 4, review the notes. And so far, I've been talking as if these steps can go back to back. Really, I wouldn't recommend that. Time. Remember that time in the coffee soaking metaphor? The more you kind of spread this out and sleep in between, so like maybe read your material one day and then the next day read more thoroughly and take the notes, it actually, a lot of your learning and the cementing and solidifying of what you're learning happens in your free time or when you're sleeping or whatever. So when you spread things out. So when it comes to reviewing your notes, I highly recommend that you review your notes later, several days later, weeks later, whatever it may be, whenever you need the material. Often you end up reviewing the notes the day before the test. I don't recommend forgetting about it and then waiting until the day before the test. Ideally, there's this concept called spaced repetition where maybe if something's really difficult that you really need to study, especially if you need to memorize lists or formulas or something like that, you might review every day for a few days, and then you might start to space it out to every 2 days or every 3 days, and by the time the test comes around, it's going to be really solid. I also recommend getting some sort of different color, red pen, a marker, whatever it is, and scribble on your notes. Not scribble, but make notes on your notes. This is where you're going to underline or highlight things that are important. This is where you might use different tools like acronyms or metaphors or ideas or different thoughts that's going to help you remember some of that vocab or the lists or the things you need to remember, or the concepts. And this is where, remember, you want to have something in mind of what you want to get out of this course. This is where you're going to highlight and mark and make notes of what you want to get. So maybe you can use this concept here, or you're learning about dressmaking and you want to make a dress. Oh, I can use this technique here. Or you're learning about business management. Oh, I can use this idea in my job here. So having that personal voice in your notes is also going to be very helpful, and it's going to help you apply what you're actually learning. So that's the 4 steps I would give. Know what you want to learn, go through the material quickly or normally, then go more slowly and take notes, and then review the notes, and remember to space that all out with time, so it has time to sink in. Just a couple quick notes with tests, quizzes, assignments, things like that. Use them to their best ability for your learning. So assignments, even if they seem a little silly, make the most of it. Think about what you want to get out of the assignment and put your full abilities into that to get the learning achievement. For quizzes, even if you've done poorly on a quiz, go back, try to find out what questions you got wrong, why you got them wrong, get the right answers, go back and use that as a learning experience, and also look at some ways that you can problem solve to do better on the next quiz. Don't be discouraged. If there's any chance to like retake quizzes, take it. Do not be, like I said, do not be discouraged if you feel like you're not doing well. Your learning is a muscle. The more you exercise it, the better you get. Make sure you learn from every mistake you make. Other than that, that's kind of the 4 general steps that I would give for learning. This is basic. You'll find similar things that most people would advise. And remember, your brain is a muscle. The more you exercise, you're going to learn more. And give yourself time. Remember to space things out and to revisit the material on different days. And you will be surprised. Notes that maybe you haven't looked at for a week of material that seemed difficult, you will be surprised how much more sense it makes when you go back and review.